Hi, this is Kathi Quinn with Floriani. Floriani is a division of R&K Distributing, and I want to welcome you to this week's Project of the Week. I thought this week we would play with applique just a bit, because there's a lot of things that I think we forget, we leave out, so let's play with some applique. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go get a shape to work with my applique. So I'm going to go to my custom shapes, and I'm going to go to Easy Art. If you drop down this box with a left mouse click, you can either go to the custom shapes or Easy Art. I'm picking the Easy Art shapes today, and I'm going to come down and I'm going to grab this little duck. Now as this duck comes in, remember this comes in as artwork. So all of this is artwork. I'm going to go ahead and close my properties box just so we can see our sequence view a little better, but you'll notice that every bit of this is artwork. And the way it's put together here, I want you to notice, is it is in the order of layers. Because remember, when we applique in layers, which is what is furthest from us, we are going to either stitch out or applique first. So as you can see, right here, it's got its little underbill. So I'm going to look at this. Now I'm going to do some measuring. I'm going to come over to my left-hand toolbar. We're going to come down to our ruler, and I'm going to left mouse click on it. Notice the ruler is stuck to my cursor. Now I'm going to look at this duck bill, and I'm going to just drag my measuring tape down by holding my left mouse key. Now notice what this tells me. It says, Kathy, this is wide enough that you really need to use a fill. Tip, use a fill. Now I know that this little blue part is probably small enough to use a satin, but I want these to kind of match. So I'm going to left mouse click on my first piece to digitize or to turn into stitches. Now notice, even though it's selected, notice I don't have any stitch types available. The reason is my active tool is that ruler. So I need to hit escape, or I need to click on the select key. Now as soon as I've clicked on the select icon, I want you to notice now all of my one-click wonders just became available to me. So let's look at that again. If I have my ruler on, even though I have selected this, notice I don't have any tools available. I have to get my select tool, click on it. I need my select tool. Once I've got it, everything comes available. And that's something good to remember, because that's one of those little frustrations that we can't figure out what's wrong. It's because you don't have the select tool activated, you have the ruler. So now I'm going to make this a fill. I'm just going to hit a standard fill, and now I have created this into stitches. Now the next thing that needs to happen is I need to lay down my applique fabric, because I'm going to applique this body. But I want you to notice something in the artwork. This is two separate pieces. So if I select applique right now, I'm going to get something around this head, which is this little piece here. Then I'm going to get his body. So I'm going to have two applique pieces. I don't need that. I only need one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select both of these pieces. I've selected them. Now I'm going to come up to the top. Now we have a combine tool, but that's not what I want to do. I actually want to weld this together into one shape, and I'm going to show you why. If I combine it, let's combine. Do you notice I can see a little daylight here? Because what it did is it welded the pieces together exactly where they were touching. So undo is my friend. I'm going to go back and select this. Now I'm going to come and I'm going to weld them. Now when I weld them, notice they are now one piece, and I don't have any daylight showing. So sometimes combine is great when you're combining it for an area, but when you're combining two pieces of artwork together as one, you want to weld them together. So we've welded this together. Now with that selected, I'm going to select this guy, And now I'm going to say I want you to be an applique. Now right now we're just going to leave things as they are. Now I'm going to grab my bill, because once my applique is done, I'm going to put my bill down. Now we could make this an applique bill, but you know what? This shape, if I go ahead and measure the shape itself, let's see. This is just about 3/4 of an inch. So that would be, at this point, that would be personal preference. Do I want to put a piece of fabric for the bill? Or do I simply want to make the bill a total embroidery? In the case for me right now, I'm just going to turn this into embroidery. So we're going to go ahead and go down and make that a standard fill. So now we've got our lower bill, our upper bill, our applique. Now all we have left is our eye and our wings. So let's go ahead and I'm going to select this. Again, I could measure if we want to measure and make sure we're within our range. This says I can use a satin, so I'm perfectly happy with that. So with that selected, I'm going to come down and I'm going to select my auto satin. Then I'm going to go ahead and select the little eyeball. And I'm going to auto satin that because I know it's smaller than the other one. And then I'm going to come here and grab my, now notice these are two different pieces. So I'm going to do the top one first because it's tucked under that bottom wing. Auto satin. Let's get the upper one. Auto satin. So now I've got a little duck that's going to, okay, there is my little placement line. Put down my fabric. It's going to tack it down. It is going to go ahead and, now it's going to go ahead and stitch that out. Now it's going to stitch out his bill, his eye, and his wings. So I have created this wonderful applique piece. Now let's come back. Let me get my properties box back up. And let's go ahead and select our applique because we want to look at what are our options with this applique. Well, of course, the obvious options are right in front of me. I can change the width of this stitch, how close these stitches are together, the density, the inset. What does inset mean? How far inset, let me get my little, okay, let's change the inset so you can just see it change. Let's go to 75. Let me apply that. So you can see what it's talking about is how inset it is within the finished stitch. How inset is the finished stitch. Now if I put this at 100%, then most of the satin stitch would be on the inside of the duck where the fabric is. So let's apply this. You can see now that is inset 100% within the fabric of the duck. So that's the inset. Normally the inset for this type thing is 50, half an inch. Of course, sometimes we want something different. Now look, this is the line that we're talking about. We're not talking about the tack down. In fact, I can take the tack down line off of here. Let me take the tack down line off so we can just see this. We're talking about the placement line. So this is exactly in the center. Sometimes we might want it closer out here or closer in, and that's where that's from. Now the tack down line is always offset by default 25% from the placement line. That way it catches it. Now let's come in here and let's look at Applique Extra. Now we have the placement line, the stitch length on the placement line, and the offsets. Now here is the tack down. Now this is at 0.5. I could change what the offset is between here and here. I could make it greater or lesser. Why would we want to do that? Well, sometimes if I'm doing a blanket stitch, I might not want to see this stitch under it, so I might want it a little bit closer in here the tack down line so that that is not obvious. I might want the stitch length smaller. What if I was using minky fabric on this duck? I might not want that little choppy stitch length. I might want a little longer. What if I was putting this on a quilt block where I already had the batting in? I would definitely want my stitch length longer. So you can change the stitch length on the placement as well as the tack down. So this is really nice to have. This is a very nice thing that you can come in here and you can continue to customize what you want to do. Now let's go back to our applique. Now again, I could come in here and say I want this to be a blanket stitch. So let's apply the blanket stitch and let's look at what we've got there. Now with the blanket, see what I'm talking about on this tack down line? Now of course I could simply remove the tack down and let it put the placement and then just have it stitch this over the top. But if I wanted a placement line, a tack down line, I could leave it, but what would I come in here and do? I would come in here and I would change the offset. And I could start changing the offset. Now watch what happens. I changed it to 0.2. I could change this to 0.1 and just have it barely offset. And you would not notice that when you had your finish with your blanket stitch. Now what else can I do with this blanket stitch? Let's go back to our applique. Well, I can change how the width from here to here, how much of a bite is it taking, and how close together are those bites. So if this was a smaller applique, I might have these at 2, and I might have the density at 2.5. So watch what happens. So you can see it's a smaller bite into your fabric and they're closer together. So you have those options. Now we could come in here and say, you know what, I want a motif stitch on this. So I can come in and from any of my motif stitches, I can select a motif because you may not want your applique looking like everybody else's. You might want something fun or different on your applique. And of course you have that option by using any of these. Now notice, you see these in red? These are ones that I have created. Now you can find a video on how to create your own motifs. So if there wasn't a motif here that you liked and you wanted something a little different, could you do it? Sure. Now here's a line. Let's apply this line as a motif. Now why do we have this in here? Because what if you want to do raw edge applique? And that was something that I was so glad when they put them in these motifs, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take down this, I'm going to get rid of my tack down line. I'm going to apply that. Now all I've got here is I have my placement line. So let's back up a bit so you can see this. I've got a placement line. So there's my placement. Now I'm going to put my fabric down and I'm going to go ahead and stitch down my raw edge applique. Now we couldn't do raw edge applique before with an applique. You could fake it. We can always figure out a way around, but this way it gives us the ability to do raw edge applique very, very simply, because there's a lot of things that are raw edge applique. Now what you could also do in here is, because you do have complete control over this, I could come into Applique Extra here and I could say offset. I don't want this offset 1. I want this positive. Let's say I'm going to put it at a positive 1 and apply. What that's going to do is that's going to put that just outside my placement line. So I'd cut my fabric just a little bit larger, just a hair, and that way I would have that tack down. Or again, we could stay with the negative, not a problem. If I stayed with the negative, I could change that to maybe to a 0.2, because my fabric would actually cover the placement line. Then I would come in and I would have the tack down just inside, giving me that raw edge applique just customized to how I want to do it. Now remember, this is all about how you want to do it. Let's go back here. Maybe we don't want to pick a line. We might want to pick some decorative stitch. So we're just going to pick one, say okay, and look at what we can do with it. Now my motif stitch length. That's a little much for me, so we're going to make it a little smaller. Use wisdom with this. Now there you go. So I've got a cute little something that is different. So I've got a little bit different here. My duck is going to look different from everybody else's. Then of course we could come in, and if you don't like the fact that the colors are weird, you can come in then and you can start looking for your colors. First thing I wanted to do is I'm going to go into white, or I happen to know white is 800. Either way, you can type in a name or the number. There's my white, and I'm going to right mouse click and add this to my palette. And I'm also going to come in here and I want to add black, which I know is 900 because I use Floriani a lot. Right mouse click, add to my design palette. So now what I'm going to come in here and do is I'm going to select my eyeball. I want this one, and I want that to be white. Left mouse click on it. I want this one. I want that one to be black. Left mouse click. I'm going to grab my applique guy. I'm going to make him, oh, I got rid of my yellow. No problem. Let's come in here and let's look for yellow. Probably 544 is what I want, but we'll just go with, look at that. Came up, it must have heard me. Wanted 544. So I'm going to add that to my design palette, maybe. Come on, baby. It's going to change it. Come on, there it is. Now let's select it. Left mouse click on my yellow. Oh, it's asking me. This is very good. Color 1, color 2. Color 1 is your placement line. I'm worried about color 2. That's the one I want, yellow. My finish color. I don't care what color my placement line is. Now I can come in here and grab my green down here. I could pick another color, so you get the idea of what we're doing. Now you can't see my white around my black eye. Let's come down here to the last icon on the left-hand toolbar. When you've got something like that, let's go ahead and change the color of the screen. There we go. Now I can see what all's on the screen because I've changed the color of the screen. There we go. Now the other thing I can do that I did not show you, let's do the other thing we can do here. Let's go back with our properties box, and we're still into applique. I could audition fabric in here. So I could say, what color fabric am I going to use? Now I can scan my own fabrics in. I can download them from the fabric manufacturers. They all have where you can download their latest collections because of course they want you to buy them. So I could say, well, there we go. I want to audition yellow. So I can see what this is going to look like with my yellow fabric in it. So you've got all kinds of options with your applique extras, with your motifs, with your raw edge applique, and we have created this design from using Easy Art. How cute would this look on a little child's, a kid's t-shirt or onesie or washcloth or receiving blanket? Add their name, and what a great gift, because let me tell you, applique always has a higher perceived value than if you use solid stitches. So I hope you enjoyed this project of the week. I look forward to seeing you again next week.